For what purpose does the gentleman from Alabama seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I move the House suspend the rules and pass H.R. 360 as amended.
The clerk will report the title of the bill.
H.R. 360, a bill to award posthumously a Congressional Gold Medal to Addie Mae Collins, Denise McNair, Carol Robertson, and Cynthia Wesley to commemorate the lives they lost 50 years ago in the bombing of the 16th Street Baptist Church, where these four little black girls' ultimate sacrifice served as a catalyst of the civil rights movement.
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that all members have 5 legislative days within which to revise and extend their remarks and submit extraneous materials for the record on this legislation.
Without objection, pursuant to the rule, the gentleman from Alabama, Mr. Baucus, and the gentlewoman from Alabama, Ms. Sewell, each will control 20 minutes. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Alabama.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield myself 4 minutes.
The gentleman is recognized for 4 minutes.
Mr. Speaker, it's an honor to manage this bill and to have worked with my colleague and the sponsor of this legislation, Congresswoman Terry Sewell, who is the driving force behind this legislation. She's worked tirelessly to bring this bill to the floor, and it has come to the floor with strong bipartisan support. Through her work and those of many members on both sides, including the Alabama delegation, we're proud that this bill has 296 members as co-sponsors. The bill, as the title reflects, posthumously awards a Congressional Gold Medal that recognizes these 4 little African-American girls. Their pictures are on the floor of the House there, and you can see their very tender age. Their lives were cut short on a bombing of the 16th Street Baptist Church in Birmingham on September 15, 1963. Many trace this decisive and heinous act to an impetus for the passage of the historical Civil Rights Act of 1964. There was a national revulsion caused by the deaths of these innocent lives, calculated to kill in a bomb in a place of worship. It was indeed a sad day for the entire country. It can correctly be said that 50 years ago, my hometown found itself the epicenter of the civil rights movement. The images of conflict and violence from Birmingham that flickered nationally on what were still predominantly black and white TV stations or screens shocked the conscience of the nation and I believe most citizens of Alabama. During the recent Faith and Politics Congressional Civil Rights pilgrimage to Alabama, a large bipartisan delegation of members viewed some of the historic sites in Birmingham. We were led on the pilgrimage by my friend and Congresswoman Sewell's friend, Congressman John Lewis, who from personal experience spoke authoritatively about those years. As we know, he was beaten many times himself. The 16th Street Baptist Church is still a vibrant place of worship. But on that day, 50 years ago, we, just a few months ago, stood in a moment of silence in remembrance of the haunting act of evil that occurred there a half-century ago. Churchgoers gathered peacefully on that beautiful fall morning, as they faithfully did every Sunday, to praise, pray, and worship. In fact, 26 children were making their way to the downstairs assembly room to prepare for a sermon entitled "The Love That Forgives" when the bomb went off. The 4 little girls whose pictures are on the floor of the House, Addie Mae Collins, Denise McNair, Carol Robertson, and Cynthia Wesley, were almost instantly killed. Those faces now, they speak as strongly to me on the House floor today as they did to newspaper readers and television viewers at the time of the bombing. As Congress and the country, eyes were open and we were shocked enough to finally pass civil rights legislation affirming the rights and protections of the U.S. Constitution, not to depend on what color your skin happens to be. The civil rights struggle was long and hard, filled with both sorrow and joy. There's a special place in history and in our hearts for all of those who were killed and injured in Birmingham. With that, I reserve the balance of my time. Thank you.
The gentleman reserves the balance of his time.
Mr. Speaker, I yield myself 5 minutes.
Gentlelady from Alabama is recognized for 5 minutes.
Mr. Speaker, it is a pleasure to join my colleague Spencer Backus as we begin consideration of our bill, H.R. 360. I am proud to have had the entire Alabama delegation, Representative Bonner, Adderholt, Rogers, Roby, and Brooks, as well as Alabama natives Representative Lewis and Bishop, join me as original co-sponsors on this legislation. I am also thankful for the leadership of both parties, Speaker Boehner, Leader Pelosi, Majority Leader Cantor, Whips Hoyer and McCarthy, as well as the Financial Services Committee Chairman Hensarling and Ranking Member Waters for their support and leadership. I also want to thank the more than 296 members of Congress who sponsored this bill. H.R. 360 requests that Congress bestow its highest civilian honor, the Congressional Gold Medal, to Addie Mae Collins, Denise McNair, Carol Robertson, and Cynthia Wesley, who tragically lost their lives during the bombing of the 16th Street Baptist Church in 1963. These beautiful girls never got a chance to live out their promise, but their lives were not in vain. As Dr. King said at their funeral, they are the martyr heroines of a holy crusade for freedom and human dignity. At 10:23 on Sunday, September 15, 1963, amid high racial tensions, a bomb went off in the 16th Street Baptist Church as people gathered to worship for Sunday. The explosion killed 4 little girls who were in the basement bathroom preparing to return to Sunday school. 22 people were injured by the blast, including the younger sister of Addie Mae Collins, Sarah, who survived but lost her eye. The senseless deaths of 4 little girls shocked the nation and became a galvanizing force for the passage of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. But, Mr. Speaker, justice was long delayed because it wasn't until 37 years later, on May 18, 2000, that all 4 Ku Klux Klan members who planted the bomb were finally brought to justice for their crimes. These innocent girls lost their lives much too young. Addie Mae Collins, 14, was a reserved and sweet little girl. She liked for people to be at peace around her, they said. Denise McNair, 11 years old, was a loving and friendly child who already exhibited a take charge and generous spirit, helping others as she went along. Carol Robertson, 14, was a vivacious young girl who was an avid reader and played the clarinet in the band. Cynthia Wesley, 14, was an honor student who enjoyed playing the saxophone in her school band, and on that fateful Sunday was going to be her first day serving as an usher in church. Although there are many individuals and events of the civil rights movement that rightly are worthy of recognition, the selection of the 4 little girls was emblematic of so many who sacrificed and lost their lives for the cause of freedom. Medgar Evers, Emmett Till, Jimmy Lee Jackson, as well as Virgil Ware and James Johnny Robinson, who was also killed within hours of the 1963 bombing. They were all martyrs for justice, who we should never forget. It was their blood which was shed for the bounty that so many of us now enjoy. While we recognize that this medal cannot in any way replace the lives lost nor the injuries suffered as a result of the horrific bombing, I hope this medal serves as a powerful reminder of the importance of the many sacrifices made and the great achievements obtained so that this nation could live up to its ideals of equality and justice for all. This nation should never forget those who marched, those who prayed and died in the pursuit of civil rights and social change. It is my sincere hope that their families will receive this highest civilian honor in the humble spirit in which it was intended. I am delighted today to be joined by the sisters of Denise McNair and Carol Robertson, the president of the Birmingham Civil Rights Institute, who are all in the gallery as witnesses to this debate today. Mr. Speaker, I want to urge my colleagues to vote in favor of this legislation in honoring the lives of these 4 girls as a tribute to this family, their families, and recognize the enormous progress that we as a nation has obtained. Mr. Speaker, I yield myself 1 additional minute.
Gentlelady from Alabama is recognized for 1 minute.
This recognition is long overdue, and I am grateful to this body for its consideration during this, the 50th anniversary year. Dr. King offered the best rationale for granting this gold medal in the eulogy that he made at their funerals. He poignantly acknowledged, history has proven over and over again that unmerited suffering is redemptive. The innocent blood of these girls may well have served as a redemptive force that will bring new light to this dark city. The Holy Scripture says that a little child shall lead them. The death of these little children may lead our holy Southland from the low road of man's inhumanity to man to the high road of peace and brotherhood. I urge my colleagues to support this gold medal bill so that this country can finally recognize the redemptive force that the deaths of these 4 girls made in bringing light to a dark nation. Mr. Speaker, I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentlelady reserves the balance of her time. Members are reminded that it is not in order to draw to the attention of the House occupants of the gallery. Gentleman from Alabama.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I now yield 2 minutes to my friend, the gentleman from Illinois, Mr. Schrock.
Gentleman from Illinois is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In March, I had the honor to join my friends from Alabama in traveling to Birmingham as part of the 13th Annual Congressional Civil Rights Pilgrimage, joined by my esteemed colleague, Congressman John Lewis of Georgia, who led the delegation to numerous landmarks that defined the civil rights movement in Alabama at the time, including the tragedy that occurred at the 16th Street Baptist Church. The legislation we are considering today comes 50 years after the senseless death of girls when a bomb exploded in their church one Sunday morning in September of 1963. Less than a month before this bombing, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. stood on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial, not far from where I stand today in the House chamber, and declared that he dreamed of a day when all people could coexist and thrive together in peace and justice. The echo of his call for peaceful protests was still fresh in the mind of millions when it was replaced by the violent explosion at the 16th Street Baptist Church, which injured dozens and killed the 4 innocent girls. Addie Mae Collins, Denise McNair, Carol Robertson, and Cynthia Wesley did not live to see Dr. King's dream realized, but their tragic deaths catalyzed the civil rights movement and produced a backlash against these unthinkable acts of violence from across the country. As we have seen in recent tragedies, acts of violence often produce the opposite outcome that the desired perpetrators had. Less than 1 year after the bomb went off at the church, the Civil Rights Act passed out of this very chamber and became law in 1964. A year later, in 1965, this chamber passed and was put into law the Voting Rights Act. Today, the House continues to act. The legislation before us awards the Congressional Gold Medal, which is the highest civilian honor given by Congress to the 4 girls whose sacrifice advanced the March of Freedom in this country. Their memory is rightly recognized by those who love justice, and it is befitting that we should honor them with the highest recognition. I urge passage of this legislation and urge my colleagues to do the same. And I yield back.
The gentleman yields back. The gentleman from Alabama reserves. The gentlelady from Alabama is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I yield 2 minutes to the gentlewoman from California, Ms. Waters.
Gentlelady from California is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you very much. I rise today in support of H.R. 360. The bill posthumously honors the lives of Addie Mae Collins, Denise McNair, Carol Robertson, and Cynthia Wesley, who were tragically lost 50 years ago in the bombing of the 16th Street Baptist Church in Birmingham, Alabama. The horror of the senseless act of violence stunned the nation and served as a catalyst for the Civil Rights Movement. I would like to thank my colleagues on the Financial Services Committee, especially Congresswoman Terry Sewell and Chairman Emeritus Spencer Backus, for their work to ensure that these girls receive our highest civilian honor as we commemorate the 50th anniversary of their deaths. The 16th Street Church was not an accidental bombing target for the perpetrators. Rather, members of the Ku Klux Klan deliberately targeted the church, designing their attack to strike fear into the hearts of those seeking equal rights. The church was a known sanctuary for civil rights leaders, including Dr. Martin Luther King, the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, and the Congress on Racial Equality, which had become involved in a campaign to register African Americans to vote in Alabama. On that fateful morning of September 13, 1963, roughly 1 month after the March on Washington, the girls went to Sunday school to hear a sermon entitled, "The Love That Forgives," when the bomb exploded, killing them and injuring many others. The bombers had hidden under a set of cinder block steps on the side of the church, tunneled under the basement, and placed a bundle of dynamite under that turned out to be the girls' restroom. The cruelty and violence of this act shocked the nation and drew international attention to the violent struggle for civil rights, inspiring a wave of legislative action in Congress. By 1964, Congress had passed the Civil Rights Act, a landmark in the fight to outlaw discrimination. By 1965, Congress had passed the Voting Rights Act, which aimed to eliminate voting restrictions that unjustly disenfranchise qualified voters. I thank you, Ms. Sewell, for your leadership on this issue and helping this nation to remind what took place on that day.
The gentlelady's time has expired. The gentlelady from Alabama reserves. The gentleman from Alabama.
Mr. Speaker, I now yield 1 minute to the distinguished Majority Leader, the gentleman from Virginia, Mr. Cantor.
The Majority Leader is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the gentleman. Mr. Speaker, I'm honored to stand before the House today in support of this award to honor Addie Mae Collins, Cynthia Wesley, Carol Robertson, and Denise McNair by awarding them the Congressional Gold Medal. The 50th anniversary of the attack on the 16th Street Baptist Church in Birmingham is a strong reminder of how many people fought and died in the civil rights movement so that this country could live up to its founding ideals of equality and opportunity. On a recent trip to Selma, Alabama, I had the opportunity to stand shoulder to shoulder with Congressman John Lewis and other civil rights heroes who stood on the front lines and fought to change America for the better. We must never forget the hardships they confronted and sacrifices they made. While reflecting on such moments in our history and by honoring those who come before us, I look forward to continuing to focus on ways in which we all can stand together once again and continue to solve our nation's problems and move forward in unison. I'd like to thank Congressman Sewell, Congressman Backus, and the rest of the Alabama delegation for their hard work on this matter and bringing it forward. The
gentleman yields back his time. The gentleman from Alabama reserves. The gentlelady from Alabama, Ms. Sewell.
Mr. Speaker, I yield 1 minute to the gentleman and my mentor and great leader, Mr. Clyburn from South Carolina.
The gentleman from South Carolina is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise in strong support of H.R. 360. This timely legislation will provide for the posthumous awarding of the Congressional Gold Medal to Addie Mae Collins, Denise McNair, Carol Robertson, and Cynthia Wesley. These 4 precious girls were killed in the bombing of the 16th Street Baptist Church in Birmingham, Alabama, 50 years ago this year. 1963 was a pivotal year in the struggle for civil rights in our nation. It marked 100 years after the Emancipation Proclamation and was the year of Martin Luther King Jr.'s stirring letter from the Birmingham City Jail, which sounded the call for nonviolent civil disobedience to counter oppression in the Jim Crow South. In that letter, Dr. King famously proclaimed, "Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. Mr. Speaker, as a veteran of those efforts, I know that the struggle for justice, empowerment, and equal opportunity for all continues to this day. I want to thank my colleague, Representative Terry Sewell.
Gentleman's recognized for 30 seconds.
Thank you. I want to thank my colleague, Representative Terry Sewell, for her leadership in this outstanding effort. Representative Sewell has quickly made her mark in this institution for her tireless devotion to duty and her thoughtful approach to legislating. I am proud to join her in this effort and urge all of my colleagues to support this legislation. I thank you. Now yield back.
Gentleman yields back. The gentlelady from Alabama reserves. The gentleman from Alabama.
Mr. Speaker, I now yield 1 minute to the gentleman from Alabama, Mr. Bonner.
Gentleman from Alabama, Mr. Bonner, is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This is the right thing to do at the right time and for the right reasons. And hopefully in some small way, this legislation will bring some form of closure to a cowardly act, one so outrageous that it became a turning point in the passage of the historic Civil Rights Act of 1964. On behalf of the people of Alabama, I want to say a special thank you to our colleague, Congresswoman Terry Sewell, and the Dean of our delegation, Congressman Spencer Backus, for their example of working together, hand in hand, to bring this very appropriate bill to the floor for consideration and for a vote. While nothing that we do here will ever replace the loss of these 4 innocent young girls, especially to their families and to their loved ones who have lived with a void in their hearts for the last 50 years, may this action today ensure that their spirit lives on forever. With that, I urge the adoption of this bill, and I yield back my time.
The gentleman yields back. The gentleman from Alabama reserves. The gentlelady from Alabama is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I yield 2 minutes to the distinguished leader of the Democratic Party, the gentlelady from California, Ms. Pelosi. 1 minute. 1 minute to the leader. Yes, 1 minute to Leader Pelosi. 1 minute to Leader Pelosi.
The gentlelady from California, the minority leader, is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I thank our distinguished colleague, Congresswoman Sewell, for yielding. As you can see, there are many of us who are very eager, Congressman, our distinguished Democratic whip, Mr. Hoyer, and I have a privilege, he more than I, to travel to Alabama with John Lewis. And thank you this morning for informing the members that that's a transformative experience. Anybody who travels there and sees what happened in the lifetime of many of us here, and certainly in the lifetime of everyone's parents here in our very own country, cannot help but be moved. So I'm pleased to be joining you, Congresswoman Sewell. Mr. Bonner, my friend, where did he go? Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Backus, and Mr. Hoyer, and other colleagues in coming to the floor. Mr. Bishop. Mr. Speaker, as we are all acknowledging, 50 years ago on a Sunday morning, 4 precious little girls walked into the 16th Street Baptist Church in Birmingham, Alabama, the same day they did every week. These 4 little girls were there for Sunday school. They were not civil rights activists. They were not agitators or advocates. They had simply come to church to learn, to pray, to be with their friends and classmates. When you visit there, you see they didn't really have a chance. They were in such close quarters when they went down those steps and the rest. These 4 little girls did not enter the church seeking to become symbols of the struggle of equality, yet in a moment of brutal, horrific, unspeakable tragedy, they would become icons of a movement for justice. The names Addie Mae Collins, Denise McNair, Carol Robertson, and Cynthia Wesley remain seared in the hearts and minds of us today as painful reminders of a dark moment in our history. For their families, for their friends, for their loved ones, their loss in a bombing of the 16th Street Baptist Church would change their world forever. Yet even at the time of great change across the country, little did we know that their deaths would change the world forever. Among the many milestones of the Civil Rights Movement, September 15, 1963, may be bestowed with some of the greatest pain and anguish. But it was on that day, as this resolution states, the world took notice of the violence inflicted in the struggle for equal rights. It was that day that stirred the conscience of our nation, galvanized the forces of justice, and spurred the momentum to pass the Civil Rights Act and the Voting Rights Act, landmark steps in righting the wrongs in our country's past. It was on that day that the 16th Street Baptist Church became a symbol in the cause of human rights and human dignity from the streets of Birmingham to the communities nationwide. It was that day that once again reinforced what Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. just weeks early called the fierce urgency of now. These 4 girls made the ultimate sacrifice in the battle for civil rights, joining too many fellow Americans in paying for freedom with their lives. This weekend, I will join the Southern Poverty Law Center to rename and rededicate the Civil Rights Memorial in Montgomery, Alabama. This memorial is a tribute to 40 individuals killed during the struggle. It is a place to remember the fallen, to take heed of their message, to deepen our understanding, and to renew our commitment to equal rights under the law. There were 4 small little children going to church, 4 students, 4 daughters, 4 members of a tight-knit community in Birmingham. 4 lives ended too soon, 4 victims to the forces of hatred and prejudice, racism, and injustice. Their senseless and premature deaths ignited the fires for progress, fanned the flames of equality. As the resolution declares, and I thank the gentle lady, one of our new members, not brand new, but newer members of Congress, for coming here and joining with colleagues, Mr. Bonner, certainly John Lewis, and members of Congress not representing Alabama, but from Alabama. As the resolution that she presents declares, the legacy that these 4 little black girls left will live in the minds and hearts of all for generations to come. To honor that legacy, to cherish their memories, to inscribe their names once more in the pages of history, it is only fitting to bestow our highest civilian honor, the highest honor that Congress can bestow on a civilian, the Congressional Gold Medal, on these 4 young Americans. That will be a glorious day in the Capitol when we all come together under the rotunda, under the dome of the Capitol, to remember them. I hope that is a comfort to their families. They gave so much sprang from that, and we will always remember. With that, Mr. Speaker, I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentlelady yields back her time. The gentlelady from Alabama reserves. The gentleman from Alabama is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I now yield 2 minutes to the gentleman from Alabama, Mr. Adderholt.
The gentleman from Alabama, Mr. Adderholt, is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today to join my colleagues, as mentioned, in support of H.R. 360 and to honor the memory of Addie Mae Collins, Denise McNair, Carol Robertson, and Cynthia Wesley, who lost their lives at the 16th Street Baptist Church in Birmingham. What we do here today honors these 4 innocent young girls whose lives were sacrificed in an act of hatred and of violence. And no doubt their death, as has been mentioned, marked a significant turning point in the civil rights movement in the 1960s. As Congressman Backus mentioned in his open remarks, these 4 young girls that range from the age of 11 to 14 were walking into the basement of the 16th Street Baptist Church to hear a sermon that was ironically entitled, "The Love That Forgives." Though they could not have known at the time, these 4 little girls changed the course of history for our nation. Addie Mae Collins, Denise McNair, Carol Robertson, and Cynthia Wesley's young lives were cut short on September the 15th, 1963, but their legacy still lives on today. And especially with what we do here by the Congressional Medal of Honor, which is America's highest civilian honor. I want to thank my colleague, Ms. Sewell, for her leadership on this bill, and I'm a proud supporter of H.R. 360, and also thank Mr. Backus for his time to speak on the legislation, and I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman yields back. The gentleman from Alabama reserves. The gentlelady from Alabama is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I now yield 2 minutes to the distinguished Democratic whip, the gentleman from Maryland, and my dear friend.
The gentleman from Maryland is recognized for 2 minutes.
I thank Congresswoman Sewell for her leadership and for yielding this time. And I thank my good friend Spencer Baucus for his leadership as well, and congratulate him and his family for the courage they showed at a time of great stress that this gold medal reflects. Mr. Speaker, the recognition for the victims of this terrible tragedy that befell our whole country on September 15th, 1963, is absolutely appropriate. And it is an opportunity for us to say once again the respect we have for these young girls, the respect we have for their families. I say our whole country because a wound opened in the soul of America that day from a heinous act of racism and terror. Those who sat inside the 16th Street Baptist Church, actually was outside the wall that Sunday, did so because they believed in a nation where not all are created equal, where not all are entitled to life and liberty. On that day, many Americans who had turned away with indifference could no longer look away. Since that day, we have forcefully declared to future generations that America will not be that nation that looks away. In America, we strive to protect our children from hurt and harm, no matter what the color of their skin, their faith, their national origin. We hold fast to the values of a memory of these 4 little girls who were killed that day, not the twisted, warped, hateful ideals of their killers. Their names have been mentioned, but warrant re-mentioning. Addie Mae Collins, Cynthia Wesley, Carol Robertson, Denise McNair. 4 of God's children, 4 beautiful assets of America. May I have 2 minutes? I thank the gentleman for yielding 2 minutes.
Gentleman's recognized. 2 minutes.
Addie Mae Collins, Cynthia Wesley, Carol Robertson, Denise McNair. Beautiful young girls. If you go down into the basement of the church, you see their pictures, you see the memorial, and your heart cries. They were brutally murdered while attending Sunday school. As the leader, Spencer Baucus, as Terry Sewell has related. My colleagues, let us honor their lives and their faith in the face of the segregation and prejudice and hate. Let us remember the words of Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr. from the funeral of 3 of those 4 little girls. He said this: "They have something to say to each of us in their death. Their death says to us that we must work passionately and unrelentingly for the realization of the American dream." That fight began with the Declaration of Independence, that we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men, and surely Jefferson meant mankind, women as well, are endowed by God, not by the Constitution, not by our votes on this floor, by God with unalienable rights, and among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. These 4 little girls had those robbed that day. Let us recommit ourselves. Let us recommit ourselves to that proposition and to unrelentingly and courageously ensure that that dream, that promise is fulfilled for all of the little children of this nation and for all the adults as well. Let us pass this bill, Mr. Speaker, and send a message that we will never, ever forget their memory. And I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman from Maryland yields back his time. The gentlelady from Alabama has 5.5 minutes remaining and reserves. The gentleman from Alabama has 10.5 minutes and is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to acknowledge and thank Mr. for his recognition of my father's role Our family is very proud of my father and the courage he showed. At this time, I yield, Mr. Speaker, 2 minutes to the esteemed chairman of the Financial Services Committee, the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Hensley. And as I said, 2.5 minutes.
The gentleman from Texas, Mr. Hensley, is recognized for 2.5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the gentleman for yielding, and I want to rise in strong support of H.R. 360 to posthumously bestow Congress's highest civilian honor to Addie Mae Collins, Cynthia Wesley, Carol Robertson, and Denise McNair. And I also want to commend my two colleagues on the Financial Services Committee, Ms. Sewell and our Chairman Emeritus, Mr. Baucus, from Alabama, for bringing this bill before the House. Mr. Speaker, I was a mere child when these innocents were murdered. I'm no longer a child, but I'm the father of two small children, a 9-year-old and an 11-year-old. I cannot imagine the unspeakable horror of knowing that my children were in church and one of the great acts of evil known in our nation's history could be perpetrated upon them. That act 50 years ago jarred millions in our nation to the realization that racial prejudice and hatred had just manifested itself in pure, unimaginable evil. And within a year, this body had passed the 1964 Civil Rights Act. In his eulogy for these 4 little girls, Dr. Luther King Jr. said, quote, "These children, unoffending, innocent, and beautiful, were the victims of one of the most vicious, heinous crimes ever perpetrated against humanity, yet they died nobly. They are the martyred heroines of a holy crusade for freedom and human dignity." Mr. Speaker, I certainly cannot add to the words of this great American hero, martyred himself. I will just end by saying, Mr. Speaker, it is a good and right thing that this body honor these innocent children martyrs, that we never forget, that we always confront evil. And although our nation was founded on noble principles, we must never cease the work of making America a more perfect union. And with the passage of this bill, I think we do one small act to do that. Mr. Speaker, I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman from Texas yields back his time. Gentleman from Alabama reserves. Gentlelady from Alabama, Ms. Sewell, is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I yield to the Dean of the House, the gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Dingell. 1 minute.
The gentleman from Michigan is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, I commend the sponsors of this legislation, and I urge the adoption of the bill. It is appropriate that we should honor these 4 young women who gave so much to the cause of civil rights. They gave their lives. Just before this event, we had passed the Civil Rights Act of 1957. Immediately thereafter, we passed legislation co-sponsored by the gentleman, Mr. Lozer, and I, which made it a crime to travel in interstate commerce for the purposes of destroying buildings or churches. And shortly thereafter, outraged by the events that took place on this awful day, the Congress passed 64 and then the 65 Civil Rights Act. These 4 beautiful children contributed in a most meaningful way to those events which caused the legislation to become law. And they saw to it that we honor their doings today with enactment of this legislation.
Gentleman's time has expired. Gentlelady from Alabama reserves. Gentleman from Alabama.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, at this time I'll reserve. I'm sorry. Mr. Speaker, I now yield 1.5 minutes to the gentleman from Pennsylvania, Mr. Fitzpatrick, who has visited the 16th Street Baptist Church with us, and I thank him for doing that.
Gentleman is recognized for 1.5 minutes.
Thank my friend Mr. Bacchus from Alabama. Mr. Speaker, I rise also to urge passage in support of the bill as we commemorate the 16th Street Baptist Church bombing in Birmingham. It was a Sunday morning. It was September 15, 1963, and I think it's appropriate we mention their names again. Addie Mae Collins, Cynthia Wesley, Carol Robertson, and Denise McNair. They were entering their church before the 11 a.m. service when a bomb detonated on the church's east side. And the explosion killed all 4 young girls and maimed dozens of the parishioners there. And the bombing of that church gave further momentum in the struggle to end segregation and helped to spur support for the landmark Civil Rights Act right here in this chamber. Last month, many of us were honored to commemorate that event and another event that served as a catalyst for action in the civil rights movement. I also joined other members of Congress in the annual pilgrimage across Edmund Pettus Bridge in Selma, Alabama, the event that marked the beating of peaceful voting civil rights marchers known as Bloody Sunday on March 7, 1965. And the pilgrimage was meaningful as other members of Congress and I reflected on together how far we've come as a country. Bloody Sunday and the 16th Street Baptist Church bombing remind us of the long and difficult struggle to end segregation. And it is immensely important, Mr. Chairman, that we commemorate these moments and these 4 little girls, that they led to the advancement of civil rights for the African American community and for our entire country. So again, I urge passage of the bill, and I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields back his time. Gentleman from Alabama.
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that 4 minutes of my time be given to Ms. Sewell to manage and reserve the balance of my time, and I do that in acknowledgment of her fine work on this legislation and those of her colleagues who visited the church.
Without objection, the gentlelady from Alabama will control the time, 4 minutes.
Mr. Speaker, I want to thank the gentleman from Alabama. It has been a pleasure to not only represent Jefferson County with him, but to serve in this body with you, and I thank you for yielding me that time. I now yield 2 minutes to the distinguished gentleman from Georgia, Mr. Lewis. 2 minutes. While he may represent Georgia, we claim him as Alabama's native.
The 2 minutes.
Mr. Speaker, I want to thank my friend Congresswoman Sewell and my friend Congressman in Alabama. I may represent Georgia, but Alabama is in my blood. I want to thank the 2 of you for bringing this resolution forward to honor these 4 beautiful little girls killed by a bomb while attending Sunday school on September 15, 1963 at the 16th Street Baptist Church. On that Sunday, when I heard about the bombing that morning, I traveled to the city of Birmingham and stood outside of the church with my friend and my co-worker, Julian Bond. We stood and we looked at the church. Later, I had an opportunity to attend the funeral of 3 of the little girls. That bombing took place 18 days after Martin Luther King Jr. had stood here in Washington and said, "I have a dream deeply rooted in the American dream." That was a sad day. It tore out the essence of our hearts. But we didn't give up. We didn't become bitter. We didn't become hostile. We continued. Because of what happened in Birmingham, it inspired us to go to Selma to fight for the right to vote. I think we're doing the right thing today by honoring these 4 little girls. They must be looked upon as those who gave their very life, gave their blood to help redeem the soul of America and move us closer to the beloved community. I wonder sometimes why, what, and how. We're a different country, and we're a better country because they gave their all. Thank you, and I yield back.
Gentleman from Georgia yields back his time. Gentlelady from Alabama.
Mr. Speaker, I yield 1.5 minutes to another native of Alabama who happens to represent Georgia, the gentleman from Georgia, Mr. Bishop.
Gentleman from Georgia is recognized for 1.5 minutes.
I thank the gentlelady for yielding. I, too, Alabama named me, but Georgia claimed me. I remember vividly the Sunday of the bombing as a young boy in Mobile, Alabama. I'm reminded of the words of James Weldon Johnson, "Stony the road we trod, bitter the chastening rod, felt in the days when hope unborn had died. Yet with a steady beat have not our weary feet come to the place for which our fathers sighed. We have come over a way that with tears has been watered. We have come treading our path through the blood of the slaughtered. Out from the gloomy past, till now we stand at last, where the white gleam of our bright star is cast. Addie Mae Collins, Denise McNair, Carol Robertson, Cynthia Wesley, 4 little girls are bright stars in the constellation, shining down now as beacons of light for freedom and justice. And so today, 50 years after the censoring in Birmingham, it's altogether fitting and proper that we should look back, commemorate the significance of the sacrifice of these young girls, these 4 young lives. Truly, it was a turning point, and the murder of these youngsters whose only crime was going to the bathroom in church, but it sparked a nation not only to mourn the death of innocents, but to act to quell the turmoil and to move us toward freedom. I'm happy to join my colleague, Congresswoman Sewell, Congressman Baucus, and all of the colleagues here in this House to appropriately pass legislation to award the Congressional Gold Medal to these 4 young martyrs in the fight for freedom. I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields back his time. The gentlelady from Alabama.
Mr. Speaker, I yield 1.5 minutes to the former chair of the Congressional Black Caucus, the gentleman from Missouri, Mr. Cleaver.
Gentleman from Missouri is recognized for 1.5 minutes.
Mr. Chairman, congratulations to you, Ms. Sewell, and to Mr. Baucus. I had returned home from a movie. If we went to church, we could have other opportunities to do other things, and I went to church, so my parents allowed me to go to the movies. When my sisters and I walked back into the house, our mother was in the living room with some friends, and they were crying. And we didn't know what happened, and she said, they killed some little black girls down in Birmingham. I had no idea that I would eventually become deeply involved in the Southern Christian Leadership Conference. And I realized later that the reason for the bombing of the 16th Street Church, it had been the headquarters, the meeting place of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, led by Martin Luther King, Jr., the Vice President Ralph David Abernathy, my father in the ministry, who wrote to me, I am your Paul, you are my Silas, and Fred Shuttlesworth, Reverend Fred Shuttlesworth, who says he taught me how to preach. And they met there, and that was reason enough to blow up that building and kill these little girls, innocent little girls. I was pleased in 1979 when Richard Arrington was elected mayor of Birmingham. And I remember thinking, Fred Shuttlesworth had coined the term Bumingham. because his own home was blown to bits. And on the day that Richard Arrington, a black man, was elected mayor, I said, it is no longer Birmingham. It is now Birmingham. Ms. Sewell, congratulations to you. This should be done. It is being done, and it furthers away that name, Birmingham, to Birmingham.
Gentleman yields back his time. The gentlelady from Alabama reserves. The gentleman from Alabama is recognized.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker, I yield myself 1 minute.
The gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, what we need to fully realize is that the civil rights victories were achieved with the guiding principle of nonviolence. There are many regions and nations in the world that have been trapped in endless cycles of ethnic and political violence across multiple generations that has torn the fabric of their societies and families. We always like to think that that could never happen here. It did not happen during the civil rights movement because of the principle of nonviolence. I journeyed at John Lewis's invitation to India, where we retraced the steps of Martin Luther King as he retraced the journey of Gandhi. And Dr. King took his own religious convictions, affirmed and strengthened by those of Gandhi, and brought back a powerful nonviolent movement which overcame police dogs, fire, water hoses, brutal beatings, bombs, bullets, and acts of violence in a nonviolent way. And really, love carried the day against hate. That was a proud moment for our country, and it is a model as we go forward. We in America have the right to petition our government in a peaceful way, and let us use that example and that tradition. Thank you. And with that, Mr. Speaker, I yield the balance. Well, actually, I ask unanimous consent that the balance of my time be given to Mrs. Sewell and to other speakers to manage as she sees fit, and give her the right to close, which I think should be her honor.
Without objection, the gentlewoman from Alabama, Ms. Sewell, controls the time.
Mr. Speaker, I again want to thank the gentleman from
90.
Gentlelady controls the time, and the gentlelady has 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Again, thank you, gentlemen. The gentleman from Alabama. It's indeed an honor to be able to manage the floor with you on this bill and to co-sponsor it with you, and I thank you for your generosity. At this time, I yield a minute and a half to the distinguished gentlelady from Texas, Ms. Sheila Jackson Lee.
From Texas is recognized for a minute and a half.
Unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute.
Without objection.
Thank you. Often we are taught in the Christian, Baptist, and African American tradition, which is paraphrasing the words of the Bible, give honor unto those whom honor is due. For that reason, I can give tribute to the two members of Congress without reservation for recognizing the importance, both Congresswoman Sewell, Congressman Backus, for giving honor to those families who languished for over 50 years and wondered, did anybody care? We thank Congresswoman Sewell for her great leadership, and Congressman Backus for joining and exuding the kind of partnership, the spirit of his family tradition, and against all adversity, saying, I want to join and to speak of nonviolence. I rise today with great enthusiasm for H.R. 360 and say to the family members, the sisters, the friends of Addie Mae Collins and Carol Robinson, Cynthia Wesley, and Denise McNair, it has been too long. And so we rise today to be able to make amends for justice that had not been served because of the callousness and indifference, sometimes of criminal collusion, and many times the lack of enforcement of devastation against coloreds, blacks, Negroes, and African Americans.
There was an era that we looked sadly upon, but now today, in the spirit of Dr. King's message of nonviolence, we are able to say yes, profoundly yes, in support.
Gentlelady is recognized for 30 seconds.
I thank the gentlelady for her kindness. We are able to now say profoundly that we honor these girls' relatives, the children that lost their future. We honor them by saying to their family, we care for you. And in the words of John F. Kennedy, we are confronted primarily with a moral issue. It is as old as the scriptures and it is clear as the American Constitution. Justice delayed is sometimes justice denied. But as Martin Luther King said in the Birmingham jail, go wherever injustice is. Today on the floor of the House, we will remedy injustice. I'm delighted to be a supporter and co-sponsor of this great resolution. I yield back.
Gentlelady's time has expired. The gentlelady from Alabama.
Mr. Speaker, I yield 2 minutes to the gentleman from Illinois, Mr. Davis.
Without objection, the gentleman from Illinois is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I want to thank the gentlewoman from Alabama for yielding time. I want to commend her for her leadership and commend the leadership of Representative Baucus from Alabama. I remember that day vividly as a young activist at the time, and we thought it was unbelievable that this kind of tragedy could take place. But I think it reminds all of us that yesterday is yesterday. We look forward to tomorrow. And I commend the gentlewoman again from Alabama and Mr. Baucus for reminding us of that time and what can happen when hands together. And so I thank you both and yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields back his time. The gentlelady from Alabama.
Mr. Speaker, I yield 1 minute to the distinguished gentlewoman from Texas, Ms. Johnson.
Gentlelady from Texas is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. You know, I think many times people wonder why so often we go back and give homage to our past. It's because we still suffer the damages of the past. And we don't forget the families that have given up so much just for us to be able to vote. And we still struggle for that vote. We still struggle for the right to vote, but we must continue. And I want to say to these families, and I know some of them personally, how much we appreciate the fact that they have been loyal to the cause, loyal to this country, loyal to our military, and stand strong today. And so I want to thank you very much for giving honor. Thanks you to my colleague, and I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back her time. The gentleman from Alabama has 1 minute remaining.
Mr. Speaker, I want to conclude by thanking all of my colleagues, especially my colleagues from Alabama and all of my colleagues who have participated in today's debate. It is indeed an honor and a privilege for me, a native of Selma, Alabama, a 30-year member of Brown Chapel AME Church, to have the humble honor of being able to be a sponsor of this bill. I know that I drink deep from wells that I didn't dig, my whole generation. And it's a long time overdue, but I just want to say humbly thank you, and I urge all of my colleagues to support H.R. 360. And again, thank the gentleman, Mr. Baucus from Alabama. It's been an honor to serve with you and to share this time with you. I yield back the remainder of my time.
Gentlelady from Alabama, Ms. Sewell, relinquishes all time, both sides having used their time. The question is, will the House suspend the rules and pass the bill H.R. 360 as amended? Those in favor say aye. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. In the opinion of the chair, 2/3 being in the affirmative, the lady from Alabama is recognized.
Yes, sir. Mr. Speaker, I ask for a recorded vote.
Does the gentlelady ask for the yeas and nays?
Yes, I do, sir.
The yeas and nays are requested. All those in favor of taking this vote by the yeas and nays will rise and remain standing.
Vote on the motion of the gentleman from Alabama, Mr. Baucus, to suspend the rules and pass H.R. 360, on which the yeas and nays are ordered. And the clerk will report the title of the bill.
H.R. 360, a bill to award posthumously a Congressional Gold Medal to Addie Mae Collins, Denise McNair, Carol Robinson, and Cynthia Wesley to commemorate the lives they lost 50 years ago in the bombing of the 16th Street Baptist, where these 4 little black girls' ultimate sacrifice served as a catalyst for the civil rights movement.
The question is, will the House suspend the rules and pass the bill as amended? Members will record their vote by electronic device, and this will be a 5-minute vote. A 5-minute vote.
The bombing at the 16th Street Baptist Church in Birmingham, Alabama, happened on September 15, 1963. This is a bill that would award posthumously the Congressional Gold Medal to Addie Mae Collins, Denise McNair, Carol Robertson, and Cynthia Wesley, killed in that bombing 50 years ago. This is the last vote in this series. We expect the House to move on to a general debate on the pre-existing conditions bill. Party line vote passes the rule, 225 to 189. There will be an hour of general debate and 2 amendments.
On this vote, the yeas are 420, the nays are 0. 2/3 being in the affirmative, the rules are suspended, the bill is passed, and without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid on the table. For what purpose does the gentlelady from Alabama?
Ask for permission for 1 minute.
The gentlelady is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Today I just want to thank this body for passing this profound Congressional Gold Medal in honor of the 4 little girls who lost their lives in the bombing of the 16th Street Baptist Church. We're so honored today to have members.
Gentleman's correct. The House is not in order. The House will be in order and members will take their conversations off the floor.
Madam Speaker, I just want to acknowledge my sincere appreciation to the leadership of both parties in getting this Congressional Gold Medal on the floor. We have in our presence 2 sisters of 2 of the deceased 4 little girls, and I think I speak on behalf of the whole state of Alabama and our Alabama delegation when I say a profound thank you for this body. And I know that everyone here is mighty appreciative of the sacrifices that their families have made in order for our great nation to live up to its true ideals of justice and equality for all. And I think that it's befitting if we all stand and clap. A unanimous vote is truly a victory for all of us, and I yield back the balance of my time.